and this is your solution.
Put 1
You're going to
teaspoon
work
in
from
there.
here. You don't work from the powders. Powders are kept somewhere else, and you work from these solutions, and that's why I brought these things up to show you. So I think we'll make a red one, shall we? I can't remember what I've got here. Oh Lord, this is cloud. Blue. Let's make a red one. Let's make this one. This one is actually Von something red. So I'm going to not do what I told you to do, because I haven't got any tape here. But I'm going to put this in. I'm going to stick my mask on. And I'm going to get the kettle because it's all boiling. And I'm going to, I usually mix boiling water with it because otherwise it doesn't, they don't all
Can I move this chair over to the other
dissolve.
side?
So it's much easier if you don't know which one dissolves. Always put boiling water in. And that's my teaspoon measure. So I will do this. And I'll get my little packet and I'll put a teaspoon in. And then I will put boiling water in. I'll shake it up. And that will be my solution. Now, I'm not doing it absolutely, if you're going to look, it'll tell you to get all the sorts of very complicated machineries, which I don't have. There's my teaspoon of dye in there. There's not in there, not like that. Anyway, you don't do that. And then you add the boiling water. And you make the solution.
Why can't you put the powder into the hot water?
Well, you can.
But
if you
then
want to.
you can't
No secret.
handle anymore. That's it. Once it's in a big pot, you can't play with the.
Yes, you can put other things in.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is quite a strong solution. And the idea of doing this is to dilute it. One thing
Right.
to say you're not breathing the powder. The other thing is it's in solution now, and you can sort of play with it. Now, according you can, if you want to, put the lid on, give it a shake, and then put a bit more water in. So we can add it up a little bit more, like there. Put that back in there, find the lid, and we all have to remember what that was. But, so that is my solution, which I'm going to play with. And when I got all these dyes, I did that with each of the colours that I got, which are on there. So I wanted to see what colours they were. So now we've got our solutions. We do what they call percentage dyeing, and you can call it whatever you like. But we probably would take a teaspoon of this and put it in the water for probably about 4 ounces of yarn. I usually have more than 4 ounces, but normally what I do is I dye about this much. These are the things I use for my coloured things. And so usually I have more than that. I can take this thing off now. You all know you've got to wear a mask, don't you? I don't bother about the mask when I'm using the liquid. I only bother about the mask when I'm doing the powder. And it's better before you put any dye stuff in your dye water, if you put hot soapy water in. It depends what you're dyeing. I don't worry too much about this stuff getting too shrunk. I mean, you know, it's old blankets anyway. If you're doing a very nice yarn, I would put it in warm water and I would put it in hotter water, because the thing about wool really is you don't want it to shake, to have a big shock in temperature. So if this water is fairly hot and your dye bath is getting fairly hot, then they're sort of comparable. If your dye bath hasn't got too hot yet, you can put it in. The soap in here helps, softens the fibres and makes them more absorbent. So here we are, we're getting all lovely and ready now. And I'm going to, I would just take this out over to my dye bath, probably get my rubber gloves on. Okay. But we're doing this to show, so we'll show you. The activities are all ready. We've got our dye stuff prepared and ready. If you want to go by weights, you dye, you weigh what you've got. Now, I'm not terribly fussy because I don't really have to keep doing everything the same. But if you were doing exactly the same, you would get exactly the same amount of yarn. You would know exactly, you put a teaspoon in here, and you would know exactly how much of that red you put in your dye bath. So that you would probably be more or less the same colour. Now, if I was going to put orange, I might get one of my yellow ones, and I might think, well, I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of my yellow and 1 of the red. I can play, I can mix, and the only way I think you can do that is to play on your own. There's a book here which I bought, which is all acid dyes, and it shows you incredible colours they've got using the percentage dye. So if you're really into it in a big way, that's how you do it. I'm not such a big way because I don't really care for my, you know, as long as they're red or blue or green, it doesn't write too much. But if you are worried. So now we've got our 8 ounces of wool, we've got our dye. You use vinegar with acid dyes, and vinegar helps drive the colour into the fibres. Now we can only use natural fibres, so we can't use cotton or linen because there's what we call bast fibres, and they grow in the ground. We can only use animal fibres. So we can use silk because that actually is an animal fibre too. Protein, your hair is protein fibre. Anything that grows is a protein fibre and it's fine. Anything that grows in the ground is bast. So
No ideas there, Ruth.
You can dye your hair blue or yellow.
Yeah, stick it in. Anyway, and so the vinegar, the
They don't
acid
say that way.
It's like a mordant, isn't it?
No, well, I was taught that it actually drives the dye into the,
Opens the,
it opens and it makes them more absorbent. And I usually use about 1/4 teaspoon. I use the ordinary old white, I got a great big thing at home, I just put it in this ring. But I just go and buy a cheap big thing. And I put in about 1/4 cup, between 1/4 and 1/2. What's in there? Not very clean. So, you know, because I'm not absolutely terribly fussy, I don't get too kind of worried about measuring exactly. So we'll put a dollop in like that. About that much, about 1/4 cup. Depends on the size of your container. My goodness, everything's doing this thing here, isn't it? And the amount of stuff you're dyeing. So I think I'm going to put this into here because it's a nice big one. But I just remembered I didn't bring my dye stick. Oh well, perhaps we could use that. We need something to stir it up. So that our dye bath's ready. Vinegar's in. Take the lovely stuff. Put your gloves on, otherwise you might burn your fingers. And off you go. You stick it in. Now, it's probably boiling a bit hard. I probably wouldn't have it boiling quite so much at home. You know, we're here. So it's boiling a bit fast. So we take it and we pop it all in. I haven't got dye stuff in. Dye stuff!
I was gonna say.
Yes, dye stuff. Here we are. And I'm going to take my dye stuff. And I think for the amount of stuff I've got, from my past experience, I'm going to use the tablespoon measure for my stuff. Because I've done this.
How much water is in the pot? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know, it's just sort of half.
Half full.
You'll find with acid dyes that they do absorb, they should, if you're right, they'll absorb all the dye stuff in there. You want to have enough material so the dye stuff can move about. It's not in a great big lump in the middle of the pot. So you want it to be able to move. And again, if you're really fussy, you probably have more. I mean, I'm not terribly fussy with this stuff because, you know, it's going to be in the carpet and it's not going to matter a few little bits that get dyed as much. But if you're doing it really well, the idea is to have lots of water so it can move and you can move it. So here we go. This goes in.
So you're gonna get that bright red that's on the card here.
Hope so. So I'm going to put a tablespoon in. There we are.
Yes,
She did.
Can't actually see very well.
Which red? She did
There
this
we
one.
are.
Did she?
That's in.
Let's see here.
So when you said it absorbs all the dye that's in the pot, does that mean that it's not that fussy how much water is in there?
I think it just absorbs all the colour.
Okay.
It's, the water is so that you're,
See, that's why I've got gloves on. Second lovely red hands now.
get in there.
I don't
Okay.
think that lid was very good. Anyway.
So it's not it doesn't really dilute the dye by having more water.
No, you'll find that if you have too much dye stuff in there, there's quite a lot left when you think you've got to the colour you want.
Oh, I see.
I don't usually throw much dye away. I usually find that all gets absorbed by the material.
And so then you have pretty clear water when you're done.
That's right. If you do it properly, it's white. I mean,
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
So, you know, it's very good from the point of view of environmental whatevers. So we've got the vinegar, we've got the dye stuff, got everything in there. This is hopefully about the right temperature to be on the soap. And we stir it all up, and it sits in here now until it reaches the right colour.
What, 20 minutes, half an
Yeah,
hour,
about 20
an
about
hour?
20 minutes. I don't usually boil it. I usually just keep it below boiling. You know, I just sort of
Medium?
Yeah. And I usually use these ones. And I just watch it and make sure it's moving. And there's lots of room for it to move. Oh, it's pink already. There we are. So, we just say, now if you don't think it's quite red enough, you can stick a bit more in. I mean, I'm fairly relaxed about all this. You know, if you want to be, you can be really, I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at that book, you can do percentage dyeing and you can get exactly the right colour. You have to have the right colours, and I don't think she's got the right magenta red to make some of the colours in there. Because you need a turquoise blue and a magenta red to really get the colour wheel. And I don't think I have those colours here. So, you know, you'd have to go and get the right.
What kind of color do you? I'm sorry, the powders. What kind are they?
They're called acid dyes.
Acid dyes. And where do you buy the powder?
Well, I was saying I buy them from this person who's in Pakenham.
I
Oh,
see.
I'm terribly sorry, I forgot to bring her address. She's called Beth.
Dennis.
Dennis. Right. Have you got them from her?
No, but I know who she is.
Beth Dennis, and she's in Pakenham.
Is it a store or a
No,
private home?
she's a weaver and spinner, and she bought up the whole shooting match from a shop, and that's where she got them all from. And so she now sells them at a very much reduced rate. Otherwise, I could tell you could get them on the internet. There are chitin dyes, Kiton, and I used to get them from various dye shops. But now with Beth having them, it's very easy to have them.
My question is, in printing you have three colours, which is cerulean blue
Yeah.
and
Yeah, three
and
different
si-
colours.
Yeah, and you can do everything. Well, you can do every colour with these three.
Well, you see, if you have a magenta
Plus
red, it's very
black.
hard to make orange,
Mhm.
because orange needs a red. And the same, there are two different blues.
So in fact it wouldn't work with
It-
dyeing, just to have.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we had what I considered to be a transforming workshop was the one that Beth Abbott did here
Yeah.
on dyeing, and that started me off on my dyeing. Anyway, what we learned were that as well as the printer's palette, there is a painter's palette,
Right.
Oh,
which is a
okay.
different set of colors from the printer's palette.
Okay.
So the painters tended to be the red, blue, standard red, blue, yellow, as opposed to the cerulean blue and the magenta and the whatever yellow it was that they used. Anyway, there were two different sets, and you can either work with one palette or the other palette, or you can use them
I think you're looking
interchangeably, and you get a whole
That's
different
good, yeah.
combination
They've
of
got the
colors.
colours there.
Yeah.
And also light is different. Like, when you mix light, it's not the same as mixing
yeah.
colour. I remember doing
Yes.
that here.
Oh, definitely.
What's that?
If you mix light, coloured lights.
Yes, because
Oh,
the mixture of all
yeah, a
colored light
mixture-
is white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you mix coloured lights,
Yeah.
it's not the same as mixing dyes. It's a question of mixing anyway.
Okay.
But all I know is that I have found that I used to use, I used to use a lot of Cushing's dyes, and some of you may know Cushing's dyes. They're all-purpose dyes. And there are all-purpose dyes, and I'm sorry, I went especially to the craft shop to buy a packet of all-purpose dye yesterday. I thought it was in the end, it's not. Downtown Craft Store sells those little Dylon, little tins of Dylon, and it only makes 2 cups of dye, which isn't very much, 2 cups, not that much. But she also sells behind the Dylons packets of dye, which will make 6 litres. And I bought one, and I dyed all my brown reed for the workshop on Saturday, because I haven't got any brown. This won't dye the basketry stuff. It's not protein fibre. The basketry is a fast fibre, so you have to have a good sort. Anyway, I think if you're interested in doing this, it's a really inexpensive way of dyeing, and it's easy. And it entirely depends how complicated you want to be as to how complicated you get with it. But the great thing is to experiment, to use acid, which is vinegar, to mix it up, put it in there, and see what happens. Not very difficult, really. But I over-dye some of the stuff that I do for my materials. But the basic dyes that she sells in the downtown craft shop work very well too. And if you want to use those, the only thing you add on those is salt. We use salt as a leveler, that's what we were taught, which sort of levels out the colour. Acid drives it in, levels it, means that if you stick your blue denim skirt in the dye bath with salt in it as well, it'll probably be all the same sort of blue. Sometimes things don't come out quite the same colour. But dye depends how involved you want to be. I've used my dye really as a rather just a fun thing to do for my blankets, and I don't get terribly excited about making all match. As long as they come out sort of nice bright colours, they're fine.
Now, how would RIT dye?
Well, RIT dye is an all-purpose dye, which means it dyes everything. And I don't know how fast it is. I can tell you for basketry materials, it's very hard to dye your basketry materials that doesn't run. The colour runs. If you dye a whole lot of basketry reed in it and it goes bright red, then you put it in the water to make it wet to use it, you'll have pink water. And the red on the reed will run into other colours. So if you use RIT and Tintex on those instances, you really, really want to be very careful to put a very little bit of dye in and see what happens.
And the salt doesn't fix the dye?
No, I don't usually put salt in. I just use it.
Or vinegar.
I don't.
Salt can be used as a resist, like when you're doing silk dyeing.
Yeah.
If you sprinkle.
Oh yes, you
salt
throw it on. That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's a whole different.
In this process, salt tends to dull the color. Vinegar brightens the color.
Yeah.
So if you sort of want to antique something or whatever, you might put salt in to
I don't bother
does it,
for
I
mine.
never use it myself either.
Yeah.
But if you want the really clear, bright shades, use vinegar.
Yeah. And I don't know if it would work without vinegar. I don't think it would.
Oh no, I think the salt is in addition to the vinegar.
Oh yes, but I mean I know what happens if you just stuck the dye without the vinegar. The vinegar is just the thing that drives the colour in. And so that's really the trick for acid dyeing. It's an inexpensive way. Dyes are quite expensive. I don't know if you've looked on the internet, but they can be $4 or $5 a little packet. And the Cushing dyes are all-purpose. And I was going to mention that an all-purpose dye means it can do both the protein and the bast fibres. But you are wasting some of it. Because if you're dyeing the bast fibres, then the protein dye just sits there and gets thrown down the drain, and vice versa. I've never actually tried putting in the basket stuff and then taking it out and putting it in the wool. How that would work, but it might do. But you usually throw quite a lot of colour away when you use the all-purpose dyes. But then on the other hand, it's not much of an effort.
One thing I found when I had to do a lot of dyeing at the museum I worked at, and it had I don't know if we've talked about this because I was in there, I'm sorry. A lot of it had to do with what you were dyeing in. So if you're going to use a pot that has any metal, which I know you're not there, you're going to end up with that metal touching it. But it can use to your benefit. When I was trying to dye a bright red and I wasn't getting it, I found that I picked up tin cups and I threw in my measuring spoons, anything that I thought
I've heard
had
pennies help too.
Yeah, or all of our quarters are made of old quarters and old silver dollars are made out of silver, so that can help too. So you can just throw things in that you have in the kitchen. I had some tin cups, so I just threw them in, and it was a mordant, so it fixed it right away.
It makes a big difference with natural dyes too.
Yeah.
Terrific. If you have a very old-fashioned pots, old iron pots, that saddens the colour.
Yeah.
Because the iron comes off the pot and makes it in tin. You can use stannous chloride, but it's very poisonous.
Very poisonous.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's why I threw the tin things in. Right.
I think you could put pennies. Somebody told me you could put pennies in. I know what they make pennies.
That's copper and it's saddened too. So
I used a copper pipe.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I used copper pipe with the
copper
black
pipe.
walnut
That's
dye
a good
last.
idea.
The last time we did it, and it gave it a beautiful sheen, like a.
Yeah.
From
So you don't have to mordant the fabric before you dye it. You can
Not
put the
for
mordant
acid dyes,
into the
no.
dye.
Not for acid dyes.
Not for acid.
I see, okay.
The mordant you only really use to prepare the fibre so it'll take the dye up. in different colours.
So if you had dye that you pre-morded maybe, and you had like white skeins of yarn, and some you had done in tin, and some you had done in whatever, and you drop them all in the same pot, they'll all come out different colors based on the mordant on the dye.
Which is fun.
It is fun, very fun.
It's great fun. And they're quite compatible too. Where's my dye stick? Pretty pathetic, isn't it? Here we are. Well, we're not going terribly dark with this.
Well, I think you used the lighter color red, Ankaret,
Did
on
I?
your sheet.
Well, maybe I might just... Now, I mean, this is a very good example of what you do. And if you think it's quite dark enough and you think we're going to add a bit more, you just put it to one side in the dye bath, put the dye in the other side, and then swish it up. But
You can stick, well, I don't know if we have anything disposable around here, but it probably would be a good idea to just check what's left in your water.
there is some, but not a lot.
Yeah, because I thought you went a little light on the vinegar.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah.
Because you put it on the dollop in.
And you can often do, if your stuff isn't absorbing quickly enough, or it isn't, there's a lot of color left in the water, and you want that in the fabric, you just give it another shot or two of vinegar.
Yeah. It is absorbing it quite nicely, but I think we can probably put a bit more dye stuff in. And for anybody who wants a bit more of a red, we've got to this stage, see?
Yeah?
And we probably will add a bit more, but I'm going to add a bit more red.
I think that's the red you did.
Oh, maybe it was. Yes, you're right. Yes, so it wasn't a very dark
So
red
that's
to
the
start
red
with.
that she made up. So that's why she's doing that.
You're right. Yeah.
We'll call it pink.
It's a pinky red.
It's a lighter one. It's a lighter one. So we can just add a bit more. And, you know, it depends how fussy you are. You know, you can do percentage dye, you can do all sorts of things. And because I don't really get terribly fussy because of my blankets, it doesn't really matter. You know, nobody's going to fuss whether it's slightly dim.
It's your choice, you're the creator.
Yeah, and I don't get too worried.
And when you're working it into your rug, you can vary your
Yeah.
colors as you
Well,
go.
one thing I always do is I always dye at least 8 ounces, because when I weave my rugs, I weave them in batches of 6, 7 or 8 colours, and I want to have enough to go all the way through the rug, one in each of the bunches. So I don't want just 6 bits
No.
of that colour. I want at least 8.
Yeah.
And so I can put more. So who's got some stuff to put in?
There's some